And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Again, this is Ron Pettit, Director of Disability Inclusion and ADA Compliance here at Royal Caribbean Group. We're glad to be here today for the celebration of International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which happened on December 3rd.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you, David. I love your story. I really appreciate you sharing it with us.
Tracy, unmute and let us know what your question is.
I actually was doing the same thing Rob did.
Oh, geez. Applauding? All right, we love the applause.
I feel it, Tracy. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. So why don't we just have a little conversation, David? Your talk was really kind of amazing. I'll make a comment because sometimes, you were talking about defining disability, and we talk about is cancer a disability? And the answer is yes, and that is one of the reasons why we have you here today, to talk a little bit about your story and a little bit about some of the things that are going on. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about your journey was, how does depression become a disability? You want to talk about that?
Sure. To me, I think everybody suffers from some type of depression in terms of degree, right? It could be something that happened at school or work or your relationship or anything like that, right? But when it comes to disability and when it comes to cancer, I never allowed anything to take control over my life. And when cancer came in, the depression was real. Because, again, first of all, am I going to die? No, we're not scared of dying until a doctor says, it gives you a death sentence. And I was given a death sentence of 3 days. So when I say I'm cancer-free, to me, it's a big deal because when they gave me 3 days and I'm still here, I'm living a bonus life. So depression was real for me, Ron. And what ended up happening was that you feel pity. You feel worthless. You feel and for me, Ron, what you got to understand is when you see my portfolio of being on stage and modeling and billboards, and then I'm 124 pounds, I'll share a story that I think will bring it home. I went to the gym at 128 pounds. I started working out. I prayed, and God gave me the strength, and I went. I lasted 5 minutes. But throughout that time, Ron, after the fourth or fifth session, I was going to the gym with a little beanie cap. It was my gym. I was a manager. And I had an oversized shirt, which was small, but it was oversized to me, and pants. Everything was big. But one thing that I told my staff was, I don't want to talk to anybody. Remember about visibility? We were talking about that. So I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want anybody looking at me. I don't want anybody, But if you would have met me before cancer, you would have said, oh, I'm a people person. I'm a charismatic person. I want to know everyone in the gym. And there was one lady that came to the gym, and she begged. She says, I am not a member. I have to see David. And she told my front desk manager, said, David saved my daughter's life. So Betty comes and gets me. I go to the front desk and I meet with this beautiful, beautiful goddess of a woman. And she looks at me, and of course, I don't want her to see me that way. I have no eyelashes, no eyebrows, I have no hair, I have a beanie cap, I'm like this. And her daughter had come to the gym because she was being bullied at school. And she was underage, but I told her that I would help her. She said, I can't afford a membership or whatever. I said, well, if we got a parent to sign for you, I will make this worth it for you. And I will even get you personal training. And I did not know that that young girl wanted to take her life. Her mom comes to the gym and looks at me, and as probably you feel sometimes with physical disabilities, you don't want to be seen. But yeah, that day I didn't want to be seen. I looked like E.T. And then she walks up and says, I just want to tell you thank you for saving my daughter's life. And she said, can I say one more thing to you? You look like an angel. Now, if you looked at me in the mirror, Ron, I would tell you I don't look like an angel. The opposite. But yet, the words that she said was because some of us forget that our beauty is internal. When you discover that your beauty is internal, is who you are, what you do, and how you treat people, all of a sudden the physical attributes go away. I learned that too through my disability. I learned that through cancer. I hope that answers the question.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, you know, I think you made some really great points about depression, cancer. Well, cancer is different, but a lot of disabilities are hidden. And, you know, we try not to use the word hidden anymore because it just means you're hiding something. So we just say non-apparent. But, you know, whatever study you use, it's roughly around 80% of people with disabilities have a non-apparent disability. You can't tell they're disabled by looking at them. And it becomes a challenge sometimes because it's a journey for people. And David, you're talking about things like, I don't want to share about my disability because of whatever issues. And sometimes when you start disclosing you have a disability, people make all kinds of assumptions about you. I have a disability, so I'm hard of hearing. I think many of you know that. But I also tried to hide it. When I was younger, I wore my hair long. It was like, I'm going to date myself. It's in the 70s and 80s where the guys wore long hair.
Where's that
Seems
picture?
like it's back in cycle now. But and I tried to hide the fact that I was hard of hearing. Yet it still became difficult later when I realized, okay, I want them to see my hearing aids, but nobody sees my hearing aids, really. So I still have to explain, like, I'm hard of hearing, I need you to stand on this side of me, this is my better ear. If you stand on this side, you're going to, I won't be able to hear you as much as I can. So there's a certain amount of advocacy that goes on out there, and I think the challenge sometimes with, you know, depression, you know, I think we all get depressed. I think the one thing that I wanted to share was, you know, there's a statistic out there by the World Health Organization that about almost 4% of the world population is depressed. And that's about 280 million people. So you're not alone out there. There's lots of other people who are depressed, and some of them are severely depressed. So, so the other question I wanted to talk...
And some of them are not acknowledging it.
Yeah.
Right? They're not acknowledging their disability or where they are in life. So that's the other problem.
Yeah, we have this conversation internally about things like, you know, mental health or mental wellness, and I want to shift the story a little bit about mental conditions. And some of that is really people who are in a journey, they may not know they're depressed. They know something's off, and they haven't diagnosed themselves yet, or they've been clinically diagnosed. And sometimes it takes a while. Like even for autism, I know many people who have been diagnosed as an adult. They've always known something was off.
Thank you for taking my question, and then also thank you for being here with us today. My question is more towards, you know, the prevalence of cancer, and just maybe any research that you may have done or are aware of. So I was just curious as to, you know, your knowledge as far as maybe resources that people can use when it comes to cancer, and then also just, you know, any knowledge that you may have as far as it being so prevalent in the United States.
Janice, thank you for the question. Yeah, I mean, in 2004 I was diagnosed, so it's been 20 years since his diagnosis. My cancer was very rare. I had an immature teratoma. You guys can Google and YouTube, and my Steve Harvey interview was about, you know, that as well. And my TED Talk is about surviving your own cancer. But it's really about, I had such a rare cancer that it grows cancers. So the tumor itself is not cancer, but it grew cancer. So I'm like, I'm a very small percentage. So my cancer has nothing to do with my dad, my mom. It took 29 years to come out, right? It's really what the doctors revealed. But at the same token, it had nothing to do with my nutrition value or anything like that. So they're still dumbfounded, right, when it comes to my cancer. But I will say this, that my research and when I speak at conferences with doctors or anything like that, I'm usually the only non-doctor in that conference talking about cancer. I will say that what I've learned is it's not just nutrition, but it's also stress. So we're living in a very, very stressful environment today than we were in 1980, 1990 to even 2000. And then with social media is adding that component that people are chasing something, they're running towards something instead of taking that time to meditate, to pray, to just, take those time for themselves, right? Or even take a vacation on Royal Caribbean and get away for a minute and disconnect. But what's interesting about it is that it's getting to the point there's basically 5 out of 10 people, 50% of the people are going to have some type of cancer. We're certainly getting a lot of the cures for a lot of it, just like we did for a lot of other diseases. But there's new cancers like my cancer, immature teratoma, that they're still dumbfounded about. But my prayer is that the one, like for me, I'm very much involved with breast cancer. I do a lot of events for women. I'm in the women empowerment business. So I deal with a lot with Miami. And I will say that is the biggest things from doctors that they say is usually the stress factor, plus they're malnutrition, they're not eating as healthy, or they're not exercising. So the typical things you've heard, Janice, are pretty much true, but the stress factor is the one that I will say is the hardest right now to get people to slow down, to get people to disconnect and know that tomorrow is still coming. But they have to make a choice. So for me, I just hope that, for sure, breast cancer and other types of cancers hopefully we get some more cures. But understand one thing, that just because it cures somebody, it might not cure another person. That's the thing about cancer. All of us have negative cells in our bodies. That's what the definition of cancer is, by the way. It's just that it will grow depending on your body and how it can defend itself. So if you do have a lifestyle of drinking and smoking and doing other things, do you have that, it might come quicker to some people than it will for other people because your body's defenses are slowing down. But it's a great question, and I hope I was able to answer it. In terms of resources, I'm going to be doing a lot of work in my documentary, which I will have some of those answers hopefully there when I'm finished with it, hopefully next year.
Applause. I had a question when the topic of non-apparent disabilities came up, and I was wondering if you could share your personal experience, as you were battling cancer and you were out in the world, and people maybe didn't recognize the battles you were fighting internally, and maybe didn't recognize the needs you had. How did that land for you? What was your experience when you were out in the world, battling those internal health issues? Maybe externally, you were recovering, and people weren't recognizing the depression, the exhaustion, all of those things. How did that land for you when your non-apparent disability wasn't recognized and valued?
Yeah, I think the beginning of it, the interesting about me, I only went home, the gym, and the hospital. That was the only thing that I couldn't. So when you're going through chemotherapy, you can't. They have to disinfect everything, and so everything had to be clean. People were cleaning my apartment basically every week when I left the hospital. So at the time, I think really the depression part of it, looking at myself with no hair, the physical disability of being so weak, Rob, like I couldn't lift 5 pounds. 5 pounds I couldn't lift. So I could be on the treadmill for 5 to 10 minutes, and that's it. So those are the things that affected me a lot, because I couldn't go anywhere else either. It was only that I went to the gym, somebody took me home, and then I would go to the hospital, went back. In the hospital, of course, people put me in a room as soon as I got there. At home, I had family and friends that would come in. But at the same time, what you're sharing in terms of that didn't really happen until after. And when I was in Boca Raton area, or where my gyms, I was a regional manager for Gold's Gym. A lot of people were supporting me. They were doing fundraisers for me. They were selling T-shirts for me. They were calling me the Latin Thunder. They were doing all these things for me. So it was more like they were pushing me. They wanted me to come back. So I didn't feel what you shared. But internally, I felt so weak. I couldn't walk normally. I had to literally, the neuropathy is still in my life. I still have neuropathy from the chemo, like most people do after chemo. So a lot of the things were more internalized. So I would think that people were looking at me because I didn't look like myself. I thought everybody was talking about me or looking at me. So in that sense, yes. But it was more me internalizing it, and I'm gonna maybe not assume, but guess that maybe a lot of us feel that way sometimes because we don't feel strong or we don't look the same way we used to, or or depending how we feel that day. Every day is different. But I would say that that was more for me internalize it, like because I was very skinny, very weak. It took a lot of rehab for me to get back to standing up straight, especially after my surgery. So that was, I hope that answers the question, but it was, for me, was really more about me being so hard on myself. And then, yeah, if I saw somebody laughing, I thought they were laughing at me. So that part of it, I do try to empathize a lot with friends of mine that are not just disabled physically, but also mentally, because I am a spokesperson for the neurodiverse community. I am a part of the speaker group, and I speak to young men and women with autism and Asperger's and dyslexia and things like that. So I always tell them, like, they're not laughing at you. It's like it's one of those things that mentally you have to block it out and just focus on you. But it's difficult, especially at the beginning for me. It was very difficult, Rob. Thank you for answering that question.
Can I do a quick follow-up?
Sure.
Would that be appropriate? What would be your suggestion for one thing that a non-disabled person could do so that to help a person with a disability, someone who's fighting that internal voice that's telling them that this is a challenge, they're laughing at me. What would be one thing that a person could do to help calm that voice, or to inspire confidence, or to make the interaction comfortable and accessible?
Well, the first thing we don't do is tell people, I know how it feels.
Right.
When someone comes up to me and says, oh, David, you had cancer. I know how, oh, man, I'm so sorry you went through that. I know how that feels. And I've had to learn, especially because I'm a public person, I've had to learn not to react. That's why I talk about, listening, taking time, and then reacting, right? Because I don't want to offend anybody. And it's not, they're doing it, I know it's coming from a good place, but it's not. One of the things that I want to kind of take it a step back, I would say that things like this, like what we're doing today, and I do a lot of corporate seminars for real estate companies and business companies, and I try to talk to the employees that are not disabled or they don't consider themselves disabled, to get to them to be empathetic. So I think that the support system has to come from people that are not disabled, or they don't know that they have a disability, because I think we all have some type of disability, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, I think that it has to come from people that have to give knowledge and share more stories, because I think all of us can relate to this. Unless it's touched your life, right, you don't really step forward, right? So if, for example, if cancer has never touched your family, right, and I come up and I talk about cancer, you're tuning me out. Unless you see my picture or something, then you're like, wait, what happened? But it happens with every cause, right? It happens with race, or with women, or with any movement that goes on. Unless you're in it, or it affects your life in some way, you honestly don't pay attention to it. So what I did with a Speak Out for the neurodiverse community was to do a lot of talks for them internationally, especially in Spain, to get to people that don't consider themselves disabled. At some point, you're going to have a challenge. So that person, if you get to talk to them, maybe you can share your story. You know what I'm saying? So I think it has to come from the people that think they're good right? Because I remember when I was just working out, managing gyms before I had cancer, Ron, and I remember I treated people nice, don't get me wrong, but because it wasn't affecting me in any way, right? None of these things affected me in any way. I was, kind of some type of public figure. So for me, it wasn't like affected. So I'm glad that I did take the time to talk to people and just give them some, but I remember never saying, I know how it feels. And I'm glad I never said that, because that's the worst thing that I think people can do. But I think when you educate people that are not, those are the people that become your soldiers. Those are the people that become, literally, when people become your soldiers and they don't have anything to do with it, it's funny, but more people listen. Because they're like, why are you telling me about that? You haven't gone through that. You haven't gone through this disability. You look fine. But all of a sudden, it brings people together, and then all of us can come in now and share our disability story with them. But now they're willing to listen. I hope that made sense.
Got it. Yeah, thank you.
I wanted to make a couple of points, and I think that one of them is, we touched upon this earlier, talking about, people and their self-disclosure about disability. And I think, Rob's question was a little bit also about wanting to know people better. So you have a conversation, you say, if you don't mind my asking, what is your disability? Can you tell me more? I'm just I want to learn. I want to learn more about you. If you put it in that space, in that
Yes.
format, I think you get to the place of helping, creating that safe space for them to talk about it. Because oftentimes, as we talked about earlier, you don't want to disclose, you're ashamed. There's many reasons why you don't disclose. And we touched upon that earlier. So you have to create that sort of psychological safe space for them to start talking about their disability and their story. And it's entirely up to them how much they want to share. And all. Tracy did ask a question about, that you mentioned about not taking time to rest as part of your prevention. So she wanted you to expand on that. So can you talk a little bit about rest and prevention?
You're talking about rest, like sleeping and taking time for yourself? Is that where?
Yeah.
For me, it's very hard, Tracy. I'm gonna be completely crystal clear. It's very hard. I live every day like it's my last, so I know I got to do better. But I'm probably the worst case, because I live like to the end. Because I feel like every day is my last, so I want to help everybody. I want to pray for everybody. I want to do everything I can today and then when I go to sleep, I'm looking at, okay, did I do everything? But then when I do give advice, I do talk about 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Hydration is very important, and taking time for yourself. For me, the gym is my time. I think I do have a time. It's the gym. I work out 6 days a week, even though I have neuropathy, even though I have joint problems and things like that. I work out 6 days a week because I feel like if I don't work out, it's going to be worse. So for me, you would never know unless I tell you that I have neuropathy and stuff like that. But like I told Ron, I am talking about that more now, because I feel like people need to know that. They look at me working out and say, how do you do all that? And say, oh, by the way, I have this. So what's your excuse? So, but rest, I would say rest or time away for me is the gym. Like I was at the gym last night at 10 o'clock last night, working out till 11, and then putting this presentation together for all of you.
Yeah, and David, I think, you have to find what works for you. It's whatever helps you to become, sort of well-being. It's about well-being, and not just mental, but also physical well-being. And I think the opportunity there is to figure out, what is your best self-care? You got to take care of yourself.
It's a good word.
A lot of times people miss that opportunity, self-care, because they do all kinds of other things. They please other people, they please their spouses, families, friends, co-workers, and then they don't take time out to take care of themselves. So I think that we are, getting to the end of our time, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, this is an International Day of Persons with Disabilities, and talk a little bit about what can we do? And I always talk about individuals because I always want to end, our conversations around what did you learn today and what can you do in your life, whether it's at home or at work. How can you take what you learned today? It could be one little thing and you do it. But David, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the international aspect because, one of the stats is out there is that 1 billion people around the world have a disability. It's about 15% of our global population. Now, the prevalence rate in the U.S. is a little higher. It's around 25% of the population has a disability. In the U.K., it's closer to 20%. So globally, there's different prevalences of disability. You mentioned Spain. You mentioned some other experiences when you and I were talking.
Yeah, Spain and England.
How do we become more global in our conversation around disability?
Well, I think internationally, like I'm just even looking here, I see, España, Urbina, Castillo, Rodriguez. I see, Sanchez. I see a lot of, Spanish international names right there, right? Culturally. In Spain, it's very cultural, right? The men and women are looked differently in Spain in many ways. There's still things in Spain that here we probably would never see. In England, same thing. There is a hierarchy as well in terms of people hiding disability from anyone else. Especially in London, I know they're trying to do something new with the new regime, with the new king and prince and everything. But those are countries that are way behind. And I think here in the United States, I think it's higher because people are. I think, and I go back and I have to kind of give credit to like Simone Biles and Michael Phelps and these people that were dealing with giving up something so powerful to them to let people know, hey, I have a mental condition right now that is giving me a disability I can't perform. I think that opened up a huge conversation. I think when people like that use their platform for that, it's a big deal. But for me, I want to go back to the safe space in your business. Like something like what you're doing, Ron, and what Royal Caribbean is doing. A lot of companies should be doing this for their whole employees, not just for people with disability. I think everyone should be listening to this message so they can try to relate if they can, or at least empathize a little bit. Or maybe like we always say, in order for the harvest to come, we have to plant a seed, right? So all we're doing today is planting a seed. And I think if businesses start doing that, but you're right, in the United States is growing because I know for sure in the autism community, neurodiverse, Asperger's, I know for sure more people are getting diagnosed and they're realizing that it's interesting because I have friends of mine that went through so much in school that now they're like, this is why. And it's sad, but I said, well, you can't go back. But what you can do is organize your story and share what you went through with other people so then other people don't make that mistake for the new generation. So I think for me it will be more, I think the businesses can do a better job at being inclusive for everyone to listen to these types of messages and bring people to talk about it that can talk in general terms, not just in just one type of disability. So for me, it's physical, as you know. It was a physical and internal and also mental disability. So for me, I kind of have a few of those things. So, but how many of you, if you can just raise your hands or hit some button or something, how many of you share some part of your story already? Okay?
Right.
How many of you want to?
And it's okay if you don't want to share.
No, it's yeah, exactly. But it's a question, right? It's like one of those things that, so you ladies and gentlemen can do something for sure, but I think that not just you, it's like I think we all need support from we have to be now inclusive of the people that are not acknowledging that they have a disability. I think that we have to look at inclusivity in a different way. Yeah. Like this presentation, maybe the whole Royal Caribbean listens to it and they start doing something to reach out. Because for me, I'll be honest with you, is support, Ron. Support For me, I was blessed that I had the support, not just from family, but my gyms, my friends, and people supported me. And even though they thought I was crazy when I told them I was going to live, but they still supported me, and they said, well, if David believes it, let him believe it. And that's one thing. Sometimes you need those people to just say, it's okay, let him believe it, because it's giving them hope. So anyway, I hope that.
Yeah, but I think we're ending up on this whole conversation around this is a human experience.
Yes.
And I think we're not meant to live in isolation. We're meant to live in a community, and the only way we can do some of that is share our own stories, and we just have to be, in a safe space where we can do that. And I know that some of you raised your hands, some of you didn't, and I think some of it is a couple of things. One is not everybody here has a disability or ready to disclose. I think there's a lot of people out there that are just simply allies, or actually what I call caring for someone with a disability. That's another aspect
caregiver
we have here. And that's why I think part of the audience here is not just people with disabilities, but also allies and other folks. And that's important because we have webinars like this. We do have a disability employee resource group called ROAR, and Claudia Espana and I are co-chairs of that group. And a lot of our members are allies or caregivers, and I think that's the other part of the story, that there's a lot of us out there that are caring for someone with a disability or a medical condition, cancer, and so forth and so on. And they have their own experiences and challenges. So we're at the top of the hour, so we want to thank you all for spending time with us today. And thank you so much, David, for being here with us and sharing your story. And thank you, Elsa, for putting this together for us. So thank you all for joining us, the celebration of International Day of Persons with Disability. And thank you.
Thank you very much for your support, Claudia, for your support with ROAR, and everyone else that has come to join us internationally and also globally and here at home. So I want to thank you all before we close. I know you wanted to say something else.
I just want to say thank you for staying with us, and I hope that something in the message resonate with what you're either dealing with or what you're trying to help someone else that's dealing with. And of course, if any of you want to reach out to me, you can. I would love to hear. When I do a speech, I love to hear from all of you. My social media is my name, everything you can share. Anywhere you go, just say Royal Caribbean, and then I'll know it's from you, or else I can send everyone my information. But I just want to say thank you again for listening today, and I really do hope it makes a difference in someone's life today. And again, thank you, Royal Caribbean, for the privilege and opportunity.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Appreciate your support.
Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day.